Thank you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a short while, but we're here. It's the first time we're getting to broadcast the COWZA Elephant Cup. I'm Ultrazim, and joining me is Sun Phoenix today for our Group B lower pool action. We've got VA Ascension versus TMC and Sun. You and I got to cast a couple of weeks ago, but first time we're back to the pro scene.
Yeah, first time we've casted some COWZA action since the last cup they ran, the Rhino Cup, I think it was called. So this is a follow-up on from that. We're already 4 weeks in, unfortunately, as we all know, with load shedding and everything. Getting teams together to play is hard enough, so getting 3 broadcasters on top of that is quite complicated. So unfortunately, we haven't yet been able to see any of the Elephant Crown action, but finally today we'll get our first look into what's going on, and we'll be starting with the second division today.
Well, I know that everyone has been waiting for this. You and I have certainly done it. I mean, Overwatch has grown a little bit in the last year or so in South Africa, and it's really nice to see more teams starting to come in, start to take part in these competitions. And the fact that we've actually got a second division at all is just testament to that. And I really like to see that we're starting to see it at the school leagues, you know, people like ACGL running schools Overwatch too. I think that's a nice sign for South Africa, don't you?
Absolutely. You and I had the joy of casting the schools league, and it's kind of a nice segue into what we're going to see today with one of our teams, at least. Of course, the team Altruism you're very familiar with. It is, of course, Thomas More College. We've seen this team perform quite well in the second division, and we'll take a look at their roster here. Shadow and Nethermat going to be our DPS to bring things out. Kiddicon and Mole, I think Kiddicon especially stood out to me, Altruism, in their schools series against, I can't even remember who they played against, but they absolutely swept the competition in that. His Ilari especially looked very, very strong. And then, of course, I've saved the best for last year, and it is, of course, Mr. Super BH, aka Chad BH, as he's known. Really, really dominant. Really the front line of this team, both in terms of how they play and, of course, as the tank of the squad.
Yeah, 100%. You know, the fact is the team plays super aggressively and BH just goes forward, and teams tend to get caught by surprise with that. And then you've got people like Mole who just constantly speeds the team around, enables everyone else around them. Kidacom sits and pockets BH the whole way through his aggressive maneuvers, and it just creates so much space for Nethermat and Shadow, both with a pretty diverse hero roster, to be able to try and enact some sort of chaos. But they are coming up against a relatively unknown team, VA Ascension. We don't know a lot about these players, Jace being probably the most notable one there, and a good place for him to take up that main tank role. The rest of the team still kind of, Zujin as well, a name that has come up and down, but this is a team that I'm interested to see how they're reacting. Kind of new to the scene, and whether they're going to be able to have that awareness to flex when Thomas More starts throwing in that big aggressive play, and whether they can start to counter it out. This may be where Thomas More has to check themselves and not overextend and try and force the issue.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because both of these teams have had quite a tough time of things so far in the Elephant Crown. Of course, we mentioned this is the fourth week of play now, and unfortunately for both of these teams, they found themselves at the bottom of the log on 2 points each. So they're both looking for their first win here. So yes, you and I have been seeing TMC absolutely dominate. That's kind of where TMC sits in our head. But it's worth remembering that the schools league compared to this league is a bit of a step down compared to the relative skill level. So TMC have already been a part of this league from the Rhino Cup before, and now coming to this year struggling a bit as well. So both of these teams are kind of looking for that first big result, really set themselves apart from the absolute bottom of the second division. So they're both coming in with looking to shift the momentum as far as their two teams are concerned.
Yeah, 100%. You know, the two dynamics of the teams are very interesting. The fact that, like you say, Thomas More is used to playing in the slightly lower competitive edge of this against the other school teams who you can get away with a lot more. Yeah. You know, you can go for that over-aggressive play. And the teams don't have the awareness to get back the comms, the synergy to be able to react to that as well. And so they may have developed a couple of bad habits. They have played at least a little bit. You talked about that Rhino Cup. It's nice to see a school team starting to step up. And that's kind of what I've been pushing them. For you guys who don't know in the chat, I'm going to try and keep this as impartial as possible. But this is actually my team. This is the guys that I've pulled together, and they've been working really hard under the leadership of Trizzle as well, someone who's become more and more renowned in the scene. And so there's certainly a lot of experience behind them, and they've been able to start practicing that a lot more. But they've still got some things to work out. VA Ascension, on the other hand, with this newer roster, means that they don't have a lot of competitive experience, at least in, you know, pro matches like we're going to get to see here tonight. And so whether they are one of those teams that can react properly is still yet to be seen.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting dynamic potentially that we see develop here. VA Ascension, if they're going to beat TMC here, you'd expect it to be off the back of some individual skill. I'm not expecting this team to be quite as well put together as the likes of TMC is. You've already mentioned it. They've got competitive experience in playing in the schools league, yes, against weak competition, as we've said, but you know, that's ours playing as a group of five that VA Ascension might not have. They've got a proper coach, a talented coach in the form of Trizzle. They've got a manager in the form of somebody named Altruism. So they've got a lot going for them in the background, does TMC. VA Ascension, they're going to have to bring something a little bit different. You're not expecting them to be able to match them punch for punch synergistically and as a unit. But we're going to have to wait and see. TMC's, I suppose, given their you know, experience of working together as a unit, a weakness of theirs might be individual skill. That's what might end up bringing them down, why we might be seeing them near the bottom of the second division, but that remains to be seen, and it could just end up being a testament rather than the weakness of TMC's individual players, more a question of the strength of their opponents when it comes to that individual skill. So, you know, just thinking about why a TMC with all the tools that they have, why they might be struggling, and that just might be the difference.
100%. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be the team mentality versus potentially the individual jewels that someone like Ascension can take. And we are going to be taking a look at our map. Well, it is going to be a best of 5. We're going to start, of course, as we always do, on Control. We've already selected Oasis to start us off there. Going to head to Hybrid. And then for the first time in COWZA broadcast, we get to see a Flashpoint map. Now, I don't know about you, son, but I am not super familiar with New Junk City or Suravasa. And so I'm very excited to get to see those. And then, of course, Escort, and if we needed at the very end, a push map. So how do you think these guys are going to adapt towards, of course, Oasis first, and then we can chat about Flashpoint a little bit if you want.
I mean, Oasis is a pretty standard map for Overwatch and Overwatch South Africa. We all know how this map works. We all know, A, what Control is like, and B, Oasis specifically as we start here on University. It's going to be interesting to see. I think the tone will be set here on Control as usual. But I mean, I'm interested in Flashpoint. Like you, I'm very unfamiliar with Flashpoint. It's going to be a trial by fire for us as broadcasters. The players will have had a couple of weeks now to come to terms with Flashpoint, but it's still going to be interesting to see how that new game type affects competitive play. But having taken a look at what we're seeing here on Oasis, it is going to be TMC with Super BH starting on the Reinhardt here. So that's interesting. They're going for a very, very aggressive brawling competition. They're going to want to steamroll the opposition. But a good counter already locked in here. Dragon on the May could be a pretty good way to stymie that. It might help them win that Rhine duel, since Jace will be bringing in the big German Crusader as well.
What's very interesting, almost a mirror matchup between them. They both have the Lucio to be able to get around. We see Super BH straight into the front lines and definitely punished on that aspect. Just cut off by the May War, just like you say, by a Dragon. And the rest of it's still pretty competent by both sides. You've still got the Baptiste on both sides. And then Shadow getting taken out, another match short to follow afterwards. Kind of following the same roles as Fuzz and Dragon on the other side, where they've got a close-range brawler and then sort of a pick-based hero in the Hanzo and the Sojourn. So far, round number 1 does go to Ascension, and they look quite comfortable so far.
And you mentioned
87% though. Come on.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you expect to see from Super BH. He kind of ended up solo, did a lot of damage, but ended up going down first. May will use the wall once again and isolated again, but he gets that early shadow. He finds a couple, follows the guy down, but a huge Dragon Strike Ultrasm will clean up the backline.
Amazing. Thomas Moore did well from Kidakong leaping over the wall on the Baptiste to try and keep BH alive, but it just wasn't enough. With that wall separating off the fight, it meant that no one was able to try and capitalize on the big Reinhardt shatter. And eventually, as they start to file in, of course, Fuzz throwing that Dragon Strike down the center, getting the 2 picks, and so VA keeps possession of this. They managed to get out a critical ultimate on the other side, and BH has to try and adapt. Now going across to probably his signature hero, the Ramatro, and we'll see how they trade blows in the most literal sense.
Yeah, it's definitely a better pick against the May. Ryan's probably his hardest counter from DPS standpoint is that May. Getting cut off by the wall is such a problem, and look at that, Super BH fists out. Starts by taking out that May that's been such a problem for him so far.
Now he's set in the middle of the field and starting to really put on the damage. We do see Fuzz getting into the high ground, but gets chased down. Super BH somehow managing to do this, and for the first time, TMC managed to flip control. They've given up 80% already, but they at least look a little bit more settled on this team comp.
Yeah, that was good from them. Good adaptation. We often complain sometimes that we don't see that enough out of teams, and it's good to see that TMC has a secondary plan here after the Rhine brawl strat didn't quite work for them. Now, VA Ascension's their opportunity to make something happen, but they've got time. 77% on the clock. They've got time to build ultimates and take a big team fight. They do have some to work with. Both supports ready to go. They start with the window.
A window, but they're in only a single point. They can't really fire out of it. It's going to come down to the Earth Shadow, which does at least offset the main tank from the other side, but Jace going to pay with his life so quickly afterwards. We see Fuzzy getting a decent angle from the side. He does manage to only pick up 1 kill, and then he throws the Dragon Strike to cut off that point, and VA Ascension turn it around. Thomas Moore still now with 1 fight to go.
Yeah, very, very well played from VA Ascension, using that the ultimate that they built up to try and make something happen. And BH going to go down towards the end there. Thomas Moore just 20% left on the clock, but they're going to come in with 4 ultimates at the ready. So this could be another explosive team fight, but it's still very much VA Ascension's game to lose here with that Blizzard ready to go. This could be an explosive team fight, Altruism.
Four ults on the side of TMC. They're going to have to use them, and they're going to have to be very worried. They've got a nice pick. Somehow, unfortunately, just on the wrong side of his own May wall gives TMC the opportunity in. The Death Blossom comes out, and combining that with the Amplification Matrix gives them a chance to come in there. So far, there is Dragon holding steady, though. Somehow manages to use that Blizzard to turn the fight right around, and TMC now desperately on their last legs, get the Wrecking Ball onto point, but all he can do is try and spin to win here in the center, staying alive for a long time, at least buying some time, goes into the bottom to get up that health pack, but whoever's coming in afterwards for TMC just dies where they stand, and they end up giving up the first point.
And honestly, I think the big difference there between the two teams really was just that May. Dragon on the May doing so much work. The extra utility that the May provides when compared to the Reaper was just critical to them winning that out. We saw how they just removed Super BH from the game. We've spoken in the past so much, Altruism, how Super BH is such a critical part of TMC's success. You know, he's not the only cog in their machine, but he certainly feels like the biggest and most influential. So if you can neuter his impact on the game, that's going to take you a long way towards dealing with TMC, and that's what that May provided. Even when he switched to the Ramatra, the May wall, keeping his supports away from him, allowed them to pick him off a couple of times. So TMC back to the drawing board here as we head on to City Center. And we'll have to see if they can bring something different out. And it's going to be quite different. They're going to bring out the Doomfist here. BH says, I'm going to take matters into my own hands a little bit here.
Well, it is interesting, you know, that was the whole success of Ascension, was their ability to separate off this very cohesive lineup of Thomas More College, and it means that Thomas More now goes, all right, try to separate us off when we want to be split up. Yeah. We see Strato, someone who has shown proficiency in the past on this Pharah, backed up by More on the Mercy, and this team is now going to be very difficult to try and lock down. They're going to be able to pincer onto a target, and you can imagine with their cohesion and their communication, if someone gets isolated, they are short-lived for this world. And Thomas More showing that off right now with this first point take. I think a big thing that Super BH needs to worry about is this hindering. The Cassidy on the other side from Dragon. He did so well in the May. If he can dismantle that back line, or at least the mobility, but he gets taken down straight away. And then even the ultimate, the Meteor Strike comes down, and Super BH just wastes no time. He's straight away back, and I don't even know where his teammates are, and he's causing havoc.
His teammates are playing Overwatch. He's playing something else because he's all by himself in the front line, in the back line. Punches raining in left, right, and center. MK1 came out just the other day, and he's clearly been spending some time labbing out some stuff with the Doomfist. But that was really just a Super BH show, causing so much chaos. And as you were implying, that's kind of what this comp wants to do. It's tailor-made for this point on Oasis. You can abuse the high ground, you can abuse the different choke points, and you can use the chaos to your advantage. And that's what Super BH and the rest of TMC are doing so effectively. And we see here some level of adaptation coming out from their opposition, but again, Super BH finds that opening pick.
And such a good pick into it, where VA Ascension grouping up so much, they still cannot push through even behind the Battle Cattle. And now that all the buttons have been pressed, there's nothing keeping him alive. And instead, somehow, Super BH with another Meteor Strike over the top. He's building these things up so quickly. And Shadow not afraid to take the jewels. Maybe he should have respected that a little bit. It's too much damage coming out from Ascension. And they get the opportunity to start pushing forward. But now's where the real battle even begins. The rest of Thomas More has the high ground. They've got the real position that they can fight this out at their time. They've had to give up the points, unfortunately, for them, but the real thing is they've got the percentage to play with. They've got to be able to come back in. With Super BA starting to rally and rejoin the fight, you can see Ascension has to start backing up a little bit and giving some respect.
Now, I'm going to move forward here, but Justice over the top finds 1, 2, 3. Both supports caught up in that, plus the Bastion as well. So that is pretty much a done deal. Shadow will pick up his force, showing us that Super BH, he's a red herring here. Sometimes you got to watch out for the pharmacy in the sky and Shadow with a Pfeiffer in that team fight.
I mean, that's the thing about the way TMC played that fight. They gave the space, they kind of baited Ascension into where they wanted them. And then where do you start looking from there? You've got to worry about Nethermat on the high ground with the Soldier who's now built up the attack visor. You got Super BH back and forth inside your team. Does pay with his life for it. and gives a little bit of time for Ascension to start pushing forwards. And with two people
COWZA
falling, it's going to have to be a massive Vice. And starting off well, two come out of it. And it's just the Orisa left on the point, desperately fighting with us overtime. And there's even the Mercy pistol to add insult to injury as TMC level up the score.
Yeah, that was a very, very nice game. You can see that once they got set up, they knew exactly how to execute. And that's kind of what I would expect to see out of TMC, given what we understand to be these two team strengths. We expect TMC to be well coached, to be well synergized, and to be well strategized. And that's exactly what we saw there. They knew exactly what they wanted to do on that map, and that was leverage the high grounds, leverage the choke points, and leverage the chaos. They did that excellently, and we saw different people excelling in different ways in different times, but that was a complete team effort. When Super BH was creating space, Shadow was using that space. When both Super BH and Shadow went down, they were still getting value out of the map, and that allows Nethermat to clean up. So really, really strong stuff from TMC. We'll have to see. This is a much more similar to City Center than to University, I think. So this could lean more into what TMC was able to do on map number 2.
Well, it's interesting because this isn't as split out as City Center either, but it's certainly more space to work with than the university. So it's kind of the mid-ground between it, and this is really where the clash should be decided between the two teams. Thomas Moore changing it up. Actually, no, they went away from the Orisa straight away. That is a massive anti-heal going out there, and poor Orisa sitting on the front line gets taken down quickly with it. Shadow once more causing that havoc from above, and then Nethermat taking the high ground advantage. Not sure how I feel about the Lucio in the Ascension composition. Maybe just trying to get them to a good position, but certainly not able to get them there fast enough. Too much time spent in that spam damage, and TMC take a good hold on the first round.
Yeah, the Lucio kind of makes sense if you want to try and get onto that high ground and use it. You can see this is the kind of composition that'll be very, very happy to be able to get set up on the high ground. That's what they're going to look to do now. Rotate around and try and get up there, but that's what Super GH is waiting, or BH rather, is waiting for. Getting in there, the sprinkler in the front line, but Shadow will pay with his life, and now they can get aggressive onto the body, so no res will be forthcoming for the time being.
Oh, there we go. It's exactly as you said. The plan was there. Ascension didn't go for that play in the first round, but this time they've executed it perfectly. Still not being able to clear out this medicine BH on the front line. The res comes out, and so both supports going to be available for TMC, and you can see the tide starting to shift. BH manages to land a beautiful punch onto the Lucio and stun him up, but just long enough for the team to follow through. So TMC flex, but they don't break.
Yeah, you can see a little bit of lack of focus, target focusing there, prioritization. They couldn't really pick a target, and part of that is you know, a team not being as well put together as some of the top level teams in the first division, but also just the nature of what Super BH is able to do on this Doomfist. Half the team is like, we've got to deal with this Doomfist. The other half is like, no, we've got to leverage our position and get rid of the danger people on the other side. But you can see how hard it is to move through. You can't ignore Super BH, even if you're getting picks on the other side. He's making space for Shadow, and they like to get picks as they've done so far.
100%. All that Ascension wants to do is run up the stairs, and now they've got a BH behind them. They've got Nethermat who's flexing so well behind them, and BH picks up a triple kill there. There is just a big problem right now for Ascension. You talked about target prioritization. At this stage, it's just trying to figure out where they are and where the main set of danger is coming from. Besides just trying to figure out who you got to kill, you got to try and figure out who you got to try and survive from first.
Well, I think we know the answer to that question. It's this man right here, but it's his turn to try and survive, and he will fail in that endeavor. Forced back by the Bastion. There's already bodies on point, so overtime will tick over, but there's a big ulti attack by a nano boost. This could be a disaster.
That's a very heads-up play coming out from Nethermat. He runs around behind the amplification matrix and eventually does go down. The Bastion just providing too much damage, but look who's back in the fight. Super BH there and buys the space for the res. The gain, this synergy between the two supports on the TMC lineup, keeping each other alive and well, sustaining the fight out there. We see the Orisa diving into the backline, pulling both of them. That is a massive fusion driver, but unfortunately, you forgot about something, friend. TMC take our control point.
Very, very well played by TMC there. You can see the brawl just wasn't working for them. It's unusual, Altruism, I think from, well, you would know better than me, but from my perspective, I would think TMC is a team that excels at that brawly play style. You stick Super BH on the Reinhardt, you let him run wild, and you back him up with Mole and Kitty Kong on the supports, making space for Shadow and Nethermat on the DPS. But that wasn't what happened. Dragon just too good on that Mei at isolating Super BH. So what does TMC do? They say, well, fine. Super BHG wants to be isolated now. We're going to stick him on the Doomfist, and he's going to dominate, and he did exactly that. We saw him pick up kill after kill after kill in a lot of these fights, but we also saw in a lot of these fights just how much of a menace he was, even when not getting kills, making space for Shadow, Nether, Matt, buying time for resurrections to come through. We saw a couple of big anti-heals as well from Kidikong, I believe it was. So, just again, I don't like to talk about a team as being centered around one focal point, one focal player, but that's what it feels like for TMC. If you allow Super BH to do his thing, TMC is going to be a tough team to deal with. But that being said, we know they've been dealt with pretty effectively by other teams in the second division. So their weaknesses do exist, and VA Ascension will know that coming into this match, and also from what we saw on University. So plenty to play for them, but I wonder if perhaps Ascension's weakness is a little bit being stuck in their ways, a lack of adaptation. We saw it there on the final point, Garden, I think it is that they were one-track minded going through that right-hand flank from their perspective, running straight onto high ground, and every time the same thing happened. Super BH waiting in the backline, punching his way through. That's exactly where he wants to fight you, and it worked out pretty well for TMC. So VA Ascension perhaps just lacking a little bit in flexibility.
Yep, I think that's the big thing. They've certainly got the skills. They took a good number of team fights. University looked very strong from there because their idea was executed perfectly. You talk about BH being like the center of it. I think he just provides the idea. Right? The whole idea for TMC is we're going to get BH to create havoc and create space for us. That's what a tank is supposed to do. But he does it so well, the rest of the team is able to utilize that. Shadow had a stellar performance there on the Pharaoh. Let's be honest, he and Mole were in the sky, very difficult to take down, even with stuff like the Cassidy on the other side, even with the Bastion that you got to worry about your positioning so much. There was just no answer to them. The people were so worried about BH in that space, even when BH wasn't the one getting the kills. We saw Shadow there with the play of the game came out because they had it. Nethermat was on the high ground and kind of offered the target, the obvious thing to try and chase down, but with the legs, he gets the opportunity to start turning around, running away, and then letting the reinforcements come in from whichever aspect that they want to do. And so this is what I'm liking about CMC right now. They realize that the we go down as 5 and we run down main is not going to work. So we change it up. And that's where now it's kind of balls in the court of VA Ascension. Blizzard World, which is going to be our second map, by the way, is going to be a very interesting one. Very open. Going to give the opportunity. Yes. Okay.
Sorry. I thought we were doing Flashpoint. But Hybrids before Flashpoint. Sorry. I was like preparing myself mentally for the trial that is Flashpoint. But no, Blizzard World first.
Yeah, and so this is interesting, right? This really does kind of lean towards what TMC showed off at the end of this first round.
Yeah, it definitely does, but I will also say you can kind of set up quite nicely for non-control maps if you've got good strategy and planning. So we saw VA Ascension, they came into Oasis with a plan for each map. Whether or not that plan worked kind of dictated how well the map was going to go. So you tend to be able to have a lot more structured plans on hybrid maps as Blizzard World is. What I wanted to say before we talk too much about Blizzard World, so far, what we would have expected to see Altruism was a lot more of a few things. We would have expected to see a lot more Zarya. She's been kind of the super hotness right now. We didn't see a lick of Zarya in that first round. We would have expected to see perhaps a little bit more Ilari. You and I especially know how good Kidikong is on that hero and how well TMC plays around that. So interesting not to see that hero. And again, we're going to be seeing more of what we saw on the first time round. Super BH on the Doomfist. Fair enough. We have no reason to expect that it wouldn't work just as well here on the defense as it did on Oasis. And then JC's going to bring out the Reinhardt. So both teams going back in a little bit to what worked for them the first time around on Oasis. But that said, no May. It's going to be Hydra in here coming in for Dragon. That looks like a substitute. And he's going to be on the Cassidy. So interesting to see if they made that switch specifically to deal with Super BH in terms of hero and in terms of player, or whether that was their plan all along.
Very interested to see Ascension obviously on attack right now, and they've got some work to do. Shadow going to be taking him to the sky, obviously backed up very well by Mole. The pylon is in a good position that TMC can poke as much as they want. Don't really have to worry. You can see the pressure that Ascension straight away under, taking some nice rooting around, but it doesn't matter. You don't get to dictate where you play when someone like Super BH straight in there. He may have gone a little bit too far. There's the hindering that we want, but how is he still alive? There are 3 people around him, and he was down to about 100 HP at one stage, and yet he still manages to get through there and get back to the team. Has no fear to charge into the fray, and then the team backing him up so quickly afterwards. VA now taking a much more scrappy fight. They've got Lucio on the points, but guess who's there and waiting? It is BH, ready to shut him down.
Altruism, how many games of Blizzard World have you watched, and how many times have you seen the fight happen there in that corner? It feels like it should happen a lot more than it actually does, but I feel like we see it so seldomly, and that's, again, Doomfist's playground. How do you have an ultimate already? Super BH is picking up kills all by himself out in the front line, knows his limits, won't take that any further than he has to, but once again, Super BH, the tip of the spear here, propelling TMC towards a strong start here. Oh no! Get out of here, Zuchin as well. What is happening?
Oh no!
Whoa. Close one.
That was close. And look how deep he is. This is a team without any long-range healing. Mole is not going to want to charge forward and try to back up BH. Ilari's not going to be able to get to him. And yet BH is literally in front of the spawn. And knowing his movement technique, he should be able to come back. Now TMC can just chill for a little bit, throw down some damage if they need to, get some poke out there. With Ilari, that's certainly going to be something that helps out. Here comes the fight over the top of the barrage. Picks up 3 instantly. No. Shield for what? What is a Reinhardt there for? If you can get in behind them so quickly. And even without BH, you talked about him being the standout player, everyone from TMC shining right now.
I mean, let's not pretend that BH wasn't involved in that. Yes, he didn't get any kills, but he was involved in the team fight, but he made so much space at the start. But Shadow picking up all 5 in that team fight, a huge barrage over the back that really started off. Once again, Super BH playing super aggressive here. The pylon is interestingly positioned here. It's positioned in such a way that BH can try and get back, but again, a little bit over aggressive there. Does end up dropping early, but has he made enough space? So far so good. A Shadow finds one, Kidakong finds another. It's just TMC domination.
Oh, Shadow under a lot of pressure in the air. The Bastion now gonna actually go dead, gets taken down straight away. Just spent too much time looking into the sky. This is something that BH did manage to do. Pulled out stuff like the amplification matrix, means that VA doesn't now have anything to come and take the fight that they really need. You know, they haven't gotten near the point really in this. This choke point is causing them chaos. And so far, no real variation coming out in their mentality. No trying to get into a different position. No going in the underground there. And BH once more back towards the team. Here comes the sunrise. Lights up a couple of people there. No one really exploding and getting taken out just yet. BH the only one to fall.
Oh, wow.
Have a couple more ultimates left in the bank though. Deadeye going to be one of those to find out. Here comes the barrage again. Shadow building this up nice and quickly. And the poor lonesome Marisa left on the point, cleaned up, and still no real tick or progress from Ascension.
Yeah, Ascension's big issue right now. A part of what's the problem is that they don't have a good comp for dealing with what's on the high ground at the moment, and that is just raining damage from above, both literally in the sky, but also just set up on that high ground. The other problem is they're not focusing the pylon at all.
Yeah.
I wish we could get a stat for how much healing the pylon has done, but it's probably comparable to what the base hero has done and what Mole and the Mercy has done, because that thing has been alive for most of these team fights. So that was a total domination from TMC there via Ascension. They're struggling here to deal with the various threats that TMC are putting out there.
And it's the variety of the threats that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
It's the fact that even when BH goes too far in, he's fighting them in front of their spawn doors. There's time for the rest of TMC to kind of back up, time to throw in that damage. Shadow's doing so well on the Pharaoh to be able to kind of oppress it. And you've got Netherman just slowly plinking and plonking and trying to confirm any kills. Ilari also very good at confirming those last bit of chunk of damage that they need. It means that now VA with an incredibly tough job to do. They've got to full hold this. Not even a third of the map going to be allowed to be given to TMC. And it's going to be a very similar lineup. TMC coming out. They've swapped off the Pharah, going instead for a much more pick-based comp. I'm very interested to see where Mole is going to be putting his damage boost on. That's got to go on Nether map, right?
I think you start off with Shadow. I presume Shadow will look for a pick here and then switch on to the Pharah.
Yep.
That would be what I would do here. So I think you sit on Shadow, see if he can open up with a pick, and from that point, if you get one pick, you probably win the game off the back of that. I think there was something I was going to say now. I think you can start to see why they might have struggled TMC against some of the other teams. And there we go. Shadow immediately opened up with a kill onto his opposite number, the Ash taken down, and now Super BH is just going to move on forward towards the point while Nethermat punches the damage through onto the high ground.
And this is something that Ascension didn't have. They didn't have a strong presence on the point to be able to try and pull the team of TMC off the high ground. And we see it now devolving in the center there. I've lost my visuals for half a second. So, Sun Phoenix?
Well, there's plenty of action on the point, but so far it's all blue in the kill feed. Shadow cleaning up. Super BH punching down Tika Taiko here on the point, and it's really just hoping beyond hope for VA Ascension that they can find a couple of picks and let the spawns come through, but that's not going to be the case. So with only one tick to get, it was only going to be a matter of time before TMC secured map number 2, and it was absolute domination from start to end. Their defense was faultless, their attack equally so, and at the end of it all, a 2-0 lead is the outcome here for TMC.
And in a best of 5, that puts VA Ascension under a lot of pressure. Shadow being the one to pick up the player of the game. This is his turnaround after BH died early in the fight, being able to come over the top. And if a 5K doesn't get you the player of the game, what really will? Everyone is starting to shine through there. And it seems like TMC, more than just the frontline brawlers that we were expecting them to come in here, certainly have a lot of depth to their roster. And even being able to flex onto something like a Widow here or there. And again, that pylon. We sort of touched on it at the very beginning of it. We saw there, even Ascension was trying to set up a nice pylon, but they didn't get to fight around the pylon. They were forced off that high ground. They were forced into the center of the point. And from there, TMC could just swarm them from multiple angles and take them out. So certainly, again, maybe a time now for VA to sit and think. This is halfway through the group stages. They're still not doing well against even the other teams sitting at the bottom of Group B with them. They've got to figure something out if they want to try and bring it back on the flashpoint.
Yeah, it's rough for VA Ascension. What I wanted I started bringing up in the beginning of that second round is that I think you can start to see part of why TMC might have struggled thus far in the second division. You can see how a playstyle like what Super BH is trying to get away with and is getting away with there is going to be punished by better teams. If you and I, Altruism, have watched enough Overwatch to know that when you are down a player, you should lose that team fight every single time, right? 2 teams of equal skill coming into each other, 4 versus 5, the team with 5 should win every time, but that's not what's happening here. And that says to me that TMC might be just a cut above what VA Ascension is capable of here, but in a more even matchup, that might be part of where they're struggling to find value. We know how good Super BH is, we know how good TMC is as well, but if he's going to be playing that kind of hyper-aggressive style, that might be part of where they're struggling a bit. Now, it's worth noting and pointing out that he probably isn't playing that way against stronger teams, right? He's pushing the boundaries of what he can get away with, and he's finding he can get away with a lot in this game today. So it's always worth pointing that out, but I think it definitely speaks to the mentality of TMC and Super BH especially, and that might be where they're struggling against teams who don't miss their shots, teams who prioritize targets a little bit more effectively, and teams who are a bit sharper in execution than VA Ascension is proving to be today. But that said, it's not done yet. We're staring down the barrel of a reverse sweep if VA Ascension is going to bring this back, but it's been done before, and we often see that sometimes all it takes is a team to find their composition, to find their rhythm, to find a chink in the opponent's armor, and the momentum can shift completely. So we're going to have to wait and see if that's what's going to happen, but it's going to have to happen on Flashpoint Altruism, a map type that you and I are very unfamiliar with.
I'm excited to see how this goes. Good luck to Peach in the background having to observe this because a chaotic map, COWZA, is where we're going to head up to. Nice and colorful, so at least if we miss the action, you guys will at least get to see a beautiful map in the background. I'm interested to see if Peach also has found any cute little secrets, certainly a habit of his. But we're going to go into this for you guys who have not seen a lot of Flashpoint. Certainly an exciting game mode. They're going to be fighting it out after successive different points. The key here, of course, being able to get onto the point nice and early, be able to hold that. And then once you've got that, of course, you don't just get to sit in the corner. You have to start moving and taking it back and forth. Both teams are certainly fighting it out and showing them moments of brilliance, whether that's going to go into a one-sided sweep or if this is a home where maybe the Ascension has found themselves a little bit more comfortable is yet to be seen. COWZA, Sun Phoenix, what do you think? In terms of general comps, do you like to see here?
Honestly, I'm thinking about what we've been seeing so far, and I'm thinking, how do you not just run as TMC what you've been running so far and find success, right? I feel like this is a map where sowing that chaos is going to serve you very well and leaning into that. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's how they choose to operate here. Instead, they're going to go a little bit more brawly, which also makes a lot of sense here. They've got Shadow on the Tracer, Nethermat can self-sustain on that Soldier, Super BH wants to be playing that aggressive style once again, but not quite so chaotic as they were when they're playing around the Doomfist. On the other side, though, it's going to be Jace on the Diva, and otherwise a fairly similar composition for both teams. Different heroes, yes, but the same sorts of ideas coming out from both teams.
Certainly quite a mobile comp coming in here, that hit and run, the guerrilla warfare style, and Mole, the only one without an escape, goes down first blood here, but TMC traded out very quickly afterwards. They can find a target and so quickly collapse on them that they can chew through anyone, and you see VA Ascension having to run for the hills. Jace, the only one left alive, and with a flashpoint open, these things tick up much faster than typical control points, and so they've got the opportunity to drop back. They've got a pylon in place. Instead, going to sit forward, of course, with Super BH ready to run in. And he goes straight out there. The Carnage attack comes through and gets in a nice bit of chunk of damage. Shadow manages to trade out his counterparts on the side. And the rest of TMC grouping up quite close. I've never seen a Zenyatta this close to the front lines. And somehow he manages to stay alive as so far VA Ascension once more debuffed.
One thing I will say that they did well there, Zujin, he focused down the Illari pylon very, very early on in that. So that's really going to be a key to winning out here. But they're going to have to back up here. It's critical they don't lose more players here. So if Fastball goes down, you can see how good TMC are at playing aggressively when they've got that advantage. Just leveraging that, moving forward and finding pick after pick after pick. That was 2 fights in the duration that could have just been, or 1 fight rather, in the time that we could have had 2. So this will be Flashpoint going the way of TMC here, and we'll see where it moves to next.
Zujin trying to maybe get there in time, put himself in so much danger, is going to at least be able to get out with their life. And so first point goes there. Correct me if I'm wrong, you have to get 3, right? It's not like a best of 3.
I think you have to get 3, yes.
You have to get 3, yeah.
Best of 5, yeah.
Okay, second point is there, and a little bit of more of a mirror matchup now. Jace swapping onto the Junker Queen as well, but there's so much healing that's not being dealt with. The pylon coming through from TMC keeps everyone alive and well, and they're able to brawl this front line. Suzu goes out, and that means it's not going to be available there for Super BH's ultimate. Goes through, takes out Jace. Tico Taco not managing to also survive for long there. Hydro trying to stay alive. Drops a pulse bomb, which gets a late pick on Nethermat, but it doesn't matter. They've already got control of the point.
And he's going to be pretty quick to get back in here. This pylon needs to be Hydro's baby, 100%. He's been in position a couple of times now where he could deal with the pylon, and he's just not. And that's something we're going to see until Hilari really becomes a fixture in Overwatch 2. She's still fairly new, so teams are still kind of getting to grips with what you need to do to beat this hero. But that pylon is a key. We can see Lucio trying to target it down now. And Jace, he will find that opening pick.
Oh, that's big. Pylon goes down. Mole with it as well. So a lot of the sustain, especially having that Transcendence back pocket, means that VA Ascension finally has an opportunity, but not when Nethermat punches 2 of his oppositions into the ground, and the cleanup is there. And once more, again, it seemed like they neglected it for too long into the fight. They had to commit so deep in there before they really got any sort of opportunities that TMC flexing back and coming out the victors in that fight.
Yeah, but again, though, they got a good start to that team fight. They did take down the pylon, not as quick as you want, of course, but quick enough that I felt like they had plenty of space to win that team fight. They will come in here for another team fight. Kitsune Rush on the point, Transcendence to counter it out, though.
Kong does get hit by the ultimate, but manages to kite back well enough, and he's got all of his teammates around him that once more TMC take this quite handedly. An aggressive charge comes through, and a decent execute, in fact, has to be said by VA Ascension, but they just weren't able to confirm those kills. And it comes down to like what I like to call doing your homework. Being a teacher, I have to say that, and that comes down to, you know, you're destructible, your things like your Torbjorn turret, your Symmetra turrets, and now, of course, with this healing pylon. There we go. Hydro right next to it, still not really shooting at it, finally turns the attention, but it's already after TMC has pushed forward and put the pressure onto it. Oh, that's a good pick. Mole gonna go down, but poor Hydro has too much work to do on his own.
Yeah, again, it's a late pulse bomb that is never ever going to accomplish anything there. He would have to 1v4, 1v5 for them to win that team fight. And I don't know, even if Diablo puts himself in a position like that, I'm still like, that's probably not the right call, guys. So I would really, you kind of got to be synergizing with your team just a little bit more, but he's in an awkward spot. He wants to be dealing with that pylon, but you also don't want to spend all your time as a tracer tracking it down, you know, putting 2 clips into it and then moving on with your day. But something needs to be done about this pylon in these team fights, but that's just ignoring the fact that what's happening on the front line here can't be ignored.
Oh, TMC take up an interesting position there, but it funnels the whole of Ascension towards them. They managed to get a good chunk of damage, but no one's going down. So everyone's so close. But Ascension staying alive except for Jay. Shadow finishing off 1, finishing off a 2nd. There goes a 3rd onto his kill feed. And that's the problem. They just didn't have that big burst healing to get everyone back up. Between Kiriko and Lucio, no one managing to really top up the team and bring them back into that fight. And with 25% left is all that Ascension has to work with. TMC looking to take this in a clean 3-0 unless Ascension comes through big here.
This would be a pretty big comeback from Ascension. They're not looking great in ultimates. They've only really got Surf Balls, Dragon Strike. They're going to throw it out now. It's okay, but doesn't find anyone down. They have taken out the pylon to start. So that's a good start to the fight for VA Ascension.
And they've got themselves some presence on the points. They've given them the opportunity. Jace not managing to heal back through, but the healer taken down on the other side. Mole going to go down. And the brawl keeps on going there. This Iliari from Kidakong just doing too much work, beaming through players, chunking their health to pieces. And then between Shadow and BH that are able to clean through with that consistent, easy to hit damage. TMC, regardless of what their strategy, regardless of what their composition, come through with the cleanest victory they could have asked for to try and bring themselves back in with a vengeance here in the Elephant Cup.
Yeah, and you go back to that first map of Oasis when we thought perhaps we'd have an even matchup here. At the end of it all, it really was TMC being a cut above VA Ascension here, looking super strong in a lot of different phases of the game. Of course, the tip of the spear, as we speak about all the time, Super BH, but really you felt on Blizzard World and Servase especially that he was making space and enabling the rest of his squad to do what they needed to do, and they took advantage of that very, very expertly. So credit to TMC. They looked really, really good here. I would love to see more of their games because they look really strong and really well put together. So I'd love to see what other teams are doing to beat them in the 2nd division. For VA Ascension, it's kind of back to the drawing board. I like that they've got a substitute in play that they can use in Hydro, kind of bring a different look, but it felt like they were kind of lost at sea after that first point of Oasis. They couldn't really figure out a way to punish Super BH and deal with the rest of TMC. So that's kind of back to the drawing board for VA Ascension, but of course, as we know, Altruism, there's plenty to learn from every matchup. And VA Ascension, there's a lot of stuff they can look at and take away from this as points to work on going forward.
I think the idea comes down to, do you have a clear game plan? Do you know what your win condition is? Because at points it didn't seem like that. When it came down to the May lineup, I think the win condition is pretty simple there, right? You get the wall up, if you manage to isolate off the tank, you chew them down, and then you take care of the rest of the team. But as soon as TMC started swapping it up, there wasn't the clear indication. There wasn't the call of, okay, you are on pylon duty. Go take that out. Hydro, you've got the mobility. Don't worry about it. You're not going to go and chew through the Junker Queen on your own as a tracer. Not even Antiablo. And yes, Antiablo is that benchmark in SA for the best tracers. But there was not the doing of the homework. And as a teacher, that's the big thing, right? Your homework is there for a reason. It's what gives you the practice. It's what gives you that baseline of how to move forward when the actual chaos starts ensuing. There was too much chaos, I felt. We saw on Oasis as well, in the Gardens area, there was one game plan. Hit the top of the stairs. What do we do from that point? Once we're at the top, how do we deal with all these threats from the different areas? Whereas TMC had a very clear game plan. BH is going to cause some space. Shadow's going to throw in whatever damage he's dealing with at that stage. Nethermask's going to try and clean up everything. Mole, you got to keep everyone alive or everyone mobile, depending on if you're playing Mercy or Lucio. And then, of course, you got Kidakong just either putting in massive amounts of healing or taking the role of the Iliari to try and chunk through a couple of targets. And the clear communication was there. When someone was low health, they dropped so quickly afterwards. I think if VA can take anything out of this game, it's try and identify the win condition a little bit more and then try and execute that, because their executions were good, but it just didn't really have a focus at any stage.
Well, the focus, if it didn't work, they didn't have another plan of attack. I think what that comes down to me, everything you're saying there, it comes down to competitive experience for me, right? TMC, they've got, at this point, for a team as young as they are, age-wise, they've got quite a bit of experience coming through the school league, of course, but also they've got that experience that from these tournaments as well, that a lot of other teams don't have, both of just playing competitive Overwatch and playing as a unit. And it's that what you're talking about comes from playing a lot of competitive Overwatch, putting yourself in these situations where you need to come up with solutions to these problems. You've got an opponent, they've got a superstar tank. How do we deal with that? The tank's not the only problem. We do deal with the tank. How do we deal with everything after that, or otherwise mitigate the effect that tank has to deal with the rest of the squad? Do we know the maps? Do we know the win conditions with particular heroes? All those kinds of things are stuff that you get with more competitive experience. So I'm excited to see from VA Ascension going forward, if they choose to go forward, which they should. Losing is part of winning if you're going to compete. And it doesn't feel nice. I don't know about you, Altruism, but I did my fair share of losing in Overwatch specifically.
Still do.
Well, no, I don't, but not for good reasons. But you kind of have to take your knocks and look at what your opponents are doing differently and how you can learn from that. And like I said, via Ascension, there's a lot you can look at. Simple stuff you can look and be like, okay, cool, that's something we're doing wrong. Here's something we can fix that is going to, next time we go up against TMC, is going to put us in a much better spot. So that's always exciting for me to see. New teams, new players, how do they respond to the knocks that come with playing against top quality teams like TMC?
You know, South Africa actually has a really deep roster of players who have been playing this game for years and years. One of them, the coach, Trizzle, has gone through those hard knocks. You know, he's played up through academy teams, and he's got enough competitive experience that he's now starting to pass it on to the next generation. And that's where the strength of TMC comes in. They've got the ideas, they've got the experience, they know how to handle so many different situations by now. It's part of the learning curve, and definitely full encouragement has to go out to VA Ascension. They had some great individual plays. They had some lovely moments of being able to execute the strategy that they were looking for. It just wasn't as consistent as we would like. They had some really nice ultimates that got thrown out. We didn't even get to chat about stuff like ultimate economy or anything like that, though, because there just wasn't really big defining moments in terms of those sort of things. So go back, keep fighting, keep learning what these guys are doing, and you've set yourself a nice benchmark going forward. The experience is what's going to be the most important thing. This is second division as well. You know, this is where you're supposed to be able to train that out. So we hope you guys have enjoyed it. Sun Phoenix, last thoughts for the day as we bring to our first broadcast to a close.
Like I said, I want to see more of the Elephant Crown here. Hopefully this kind of opens the floodgates on that from a broadcast point of view, because I think there's a lot of storylines unfolding, a lot of teams. I would love to have known what teams were doing against TMC for them to be down near the bottom of this group. I would love to know how VA Ascension is performing against other teams. I'd like to see the relative strength of different teams at different positions in these two divisions and see those storylines unfold. So here's hoping that we get to see more of the Elephant Crown going forward.
Well, we'll definitely try and bring you as much of that action as possible. Of course, try and stay up to date on all of our socials, Sun Phoenix and Ultraism. Peach always puts out a bunch of stuff himself. And then, of course, the original ZA Overwatch on Twitter or X right now that you should go and follow out there. Catch any of this action. Of course, if you do miss any of these streams, it all goes up on YouTube, so you guys can go check it out or relive your best moments. Go do some VOD reviews if you're one of these two teams. But in terms of the action, Overwatch is in a very dynamic place right now. We're getting to see some fantastically exciting games. The meta is blown wide open right now. I mean, we thought we were going to see Zarya all night, and we didn't get to see her once. And so really things are as exciting as they can be. South Africa is starting to be revitalized in terms of Overwatch, and so there's definitely a bright looking future ahead, especially led by Eliaria, of course, the sunbeam that has come through, and certainly been one of the most exciting additions to the game, just changing up what that support role looks like. But that is going to be it for us here tonight. Congratulations to TMC, a very strong 3-0 victory here over VA Ascension, but there is going to be a lot more coming, so don't go anywhere. Well, you can go somewhere now, right? We're done for the night. But certainly make sure to try and catch all future broadcasts here of the Elephant Cup. Until then, keep safe, go practice, and we'll see you next time.